mentioned that efficiency implies that there's an equilibrium, and equilibrium in turns also implies the other way, efficiency. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to take that apart. And you will realize that some of the concepts we talk about, we have already talked about in chapter 3, yes, Mr. Parker?
Can you explain that sign again?
Oh, that sign, that's a mathematical sign. It means if it goes one way from here to here, instead of one arrow, it's got two horizontal lines. That
so
means
it's
it implies, yeah. So the other way, if it goes the other way, means it implies this way also. So in other words, in English, efficiency implies equilibrium. At the same time, equilibrium also implies efficiency. And that's a whole semester of coursework proven in mathematics if you take PhD class in economics. Whole class, just deal with that equation alone. Because I've done that before. Thank you so much. Very good. So, now when we talk about Pareto efficiency, again, we talk about, remember in chapter 3, we mentioned the word like price ceiling, price floor. And we say that anytime that you have market intervention, like a government trying to do something, impose a price ceiling, price floor, then we got a problem. What is that problem? Remember that in the case of minimum wages, we say that, oh yeah, there are a group of people who got help. These people who got help are the ones who got to be paid $7.25 per hour. But then there are a group of people who got displaced, right? Who are those people?
The unemployed.
The unemployed, yeah. The one who got displaced are the one who didn't get the job as a result of raising that minimum wages. And some of you know what I'm talking about because look at Walmart. What do? They start to cut workers, or they just give them less hours, or give them less fringe benefit, and not providing insurance, for example. That's one way that some employers would do. Okay. Now, we also talk at length about imperfect competition. Anybody remember that? What is a long-run equilibrium for perfect competition? We talked about it at least 2 times in the last class. Anybody remember? You're welcome to go back and look at it. That's a good review.
Well, P equals the average.
Okay, very good. Okay, P equals to ATC or ABC, average variable cost, and that's when you do not have any profit or loss. You have something called break even. You're at the freezing point. We call that long run equilibrium, where P goes to ABC. Very good. Okay, and you came across, I think we came across that term in the first class, total economic surplus. Remember that's the benefit minus the cost, right? And what is total economic surplus is really 2 things together. Now, we have studied what is consumer surplus before. Remember, we calculate that upper triangle. Remember this right here? This is your CS, this is your PS. Anybody remember that definition? Very important in this chapter. And on your test, we'll ask you to calculate consumer surplus and producer surplus. I have just said that. So, your consumer surplus is the, once again, the
Area of the triangle below the
very good.
Price.
Very good. Area of the triangle below the demand curve and above the price line. Remember that definition because that's going to be very helpful in this class today. And your producer surplus will be the area below the price line and above that supply curve. Okay, so typically we say in this case your total economic surplus is always consumer surplus plus producer surplus. So it's that whole triangle known as ABC. Okay, everybody okay with that? So that's your triangle ABC. And CS would be, let's add one more ABD. And your PS would be BCD. Triangle BCD. Okay, that's just to show you how to calculate. Now remember, consumer surplus is the triangle above it. Because that's, remember the Michael Jackson concert example we gave? That's how much he's willing to pay for the first ticket. And then as he goes on, pay for his girlfriend and grandma and all that, he's becoming less and less willing to pay. as he buy more and more units of the ticket. So, but here's the price line, and then surprise, when he got there, the price was only $6, so he ripped consumer surplus of every single unit he has, up to the point where he paid for the homeless person, if you remember our example. So, anyway, the sum of all the individual economic surplus gained by both buyers and sellers, not just buyer or the sellers, but both buyer and sellers. So in other words, the goal of the economy a lot of time is to, how do we maximize that triangle ABC? How do we make that triangle as big as possible? That's what we're gonna look at today. And we will look at, well, in some situation like price control, government intervention, then you see that you're not quite maximizing the total economic surplus anymore. There'll be some redistribution of wealth going on. And you also have a waste at some point, which you also call a total social cost. And we have a very fancy name for it in economics. This is why you're taking this class. It's known as dead weight loss. My short form is DWL. John while living. No, I'm kidding. It's just dead weight loss. So just remember that. Okay, so consumer surplus once again, quick review. Economic surplus gained by the buyers of the product, because you're on the consumer side. And remember, that's your upper triangle. It's measured by the difference between their reservation price. That will be, of course, your buyer's reservation price and the price that they pay. Now, if you have your book, refer to it. Because I see that some of you like to take notes, and that's good, because you see that I reward some of you for taking notes. I should do it for the other class. I've never done it for the other class, I just realized. So, page, what is it, 186? Yeah, my number is always different from yours. Somewhere around page 172, 173, something like that. Well, actually, turn one more page. Yeah. Okay, producer surplus is the economic surplus gained by the sellers now. Because it's producer, seller is the same as producer. It measured by the difference between the price they receive and their reservation price. So the price they receive is up here, equilibrium price. And the price they're willing to let go is down here. So in the case of producer surplus, it keeps going up. So we'll look at example coming up next. So that's just a straightforward definition. If you had the definition I gave you before, that's actually better. Okay? So please, at this point, if you have your cell phone, please put it away. I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, next we want to look at what's the meaning of this surplus, total economic surplus and efficiency. So I've said before, right, if you want to maximize your total economic surplus, it happens at the point where your equilibrium is. So that's what it means here. Where you have your equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, right here. Seems like a pretty easy concept, but then we go deeper now. This is your equilibrium price, your equilibrium quantity, Q star and P star. And that's where you would, keyword here, maximize your total economic surplus. So your total economic surplus actually would be considered lower at any other point that you deviate or move away from that so-called equilibrium. And you have already seen that in the case of minimum wages, in the case of rent control, where you actually apply this, what do we call this, price ceiling and price floor. In other words, when it is lower, it means that you have some sort of waste. A policymaker does not like this word. You think Donald Trump likes to hear that? You know how to make business at any other price and quantity combination. So that's what I'm talking about, the waste. But I have not shown you examples yet. So we look at a few examples now. So a lot of examples I'm going to show you from now on, right? as soon as you deviate away from that equilibrium point, right, you will have some waste, and your consumer surplus and your producer surplus will scramble, meaning like redistributed unlike before. So let's look at this very simple example. In this example, tell me what is the equilibrium price, what is the equilibrium quantity? How much is the equilibrium price here?
$1.50.
$1.50, okay, you understand. I'm glad nobody say $1. If you say $1, you have to, I don't know, you may have to repeat this class. Okay, what about equilibrium quantity is 3,000, right? So pay attention to this unit here. Sometime on the test we ask you something, you know, we say $3 and $3,000, so be careful. Okay, watch for that. So now we are assuming, in economics we make a lot of assumptions, assuming that if the price is $1, so we draw this yellow line, whoops, like that, and then we say the quantity supply will be, according to this right here, is 2,000. Everybody okay with that? The quantity demanded will be 4,000, but it doesn't matter. So all that we're saying at $1 quantity supply is 2,000, and at 2,000, if you draw the line up, you could see that consumer is actually willing to pay $2 because that's a demand curve at 2,000, but the actual price is $1. Oh, so there is that discrepancy right there. So we take one step further and make this assumption. We say, how about if the buyer pays $1.25? Is he better off? Yes, still better off because, you know, I mean, better off in the sense that, you know, if the producer charges $1 and someone is willing to pay $1.25. So yeah, the producer or the seller is 25 cents better off, correct? Okay, that's what it means here. And the consumer is still 75 cents better off because he's willing to pay $2. And then the seller say, oh yeah, how about $1.25? I say, really, do you mean it? Okay. So it's a win-win situation. Well, we could push it until it's equal, but we're not gonna do it right now in this example. So in other words, there's an economic surplus increased by $1, which is the distance between 2 and 1 here. And then of course it's up to them how they want to negotiate. And as you can see, it's only, everything we see is scrambling at $1.50. Because notice this triangle right here. See my finger right here? Everybody see that triangle? Okay, everybody see that triangle? We have a name for that triangle. That's a bad guy. We call it bad triangle, which is right here.
Economic surplus.
Lost in economic surplus. That's what we call it. That's my nickname for it because I like to give a nickname to all these triangles. So that's a bad triangle. And that bad triangle represents your so-called debt which loss. In economics, we calculate that a lot because the bigger that triangle, the worse news for Donald Trump, right? Because look, the waste means like, imagine if you, how many of you watch TV like this cartoon, you know, they have this money bag, they draw this dollar sign, and if you open the bag, it's all cash, you know, they're not real because it's cartoon, you know, you see all the green notes and, assuming that it's $1 billion in the bag, just imagine, use your imagination. And you tied it around with a string, you know, have the money sign outside the bag, you know, it's a white bag, and you drive all the way to Wilmington to the beach, and then you say, toss it into the ocean. Why do we do that? If you toss it in the ocean, nobody has seen you done that, and it sink down to the bottom of the sea, and the shark and all the fish gobble it up over time. It's a waste. It's not recoverable. So that's why policymakers are very concerned about that so-called social loss or lost in economic surplus, or in economic term we call it dead weight loss. And then we say this. This is so important. I told you this before. We'll ask you this on the test. Because if you go back to the perfect competition assumption, this is some of the assumptions. The market will be efficient when buyers and sellers are well informed. They know the price. They know where to get the product. And there are many buyers and sellers out there. But markets are perfectly competitive, so that's a market we have been dealing with so far, the benchmark. And supply measures all relevant costs and demand measures all relevant benefits. So that's when you see that this is your marginal cost, this is your marginal benefit. Okay, so that's all that it is saying. If you're in equilibrium, you're in that situation. Okay, so this is all in your, again, I see some of you have this very good practice. You actually print out a PowerPoint in advance, you bring it to the class, you add notes. That's good. Because there's no way you could copy everything so fast. So just go for like keywords. And I do have to move on. In economics, people like Donald Trump, right? One of the important goals is to make sure that we have efficiency. Efficiency is very important in economics, yeah. And then the other important goal is, you've heard this before, strive for income equality. Where everybody, probably not in my lifetime, because United States is a big country, there's great income inequality. The greater the country, the harder it is to make it equal. You look at small countries like Switzerland, Singapore, they have less problems striving towards that income equality. So that's another economic goal that a given policymaker like to strive for. So you see, that's something you could look up articles for if that's something that's on your heart, And again, I tell my students a lot of the time, don't pick something. Take my advice, look at me, everybody. Don't pick at articles that is, you think, yeah, this would do well. Pick at articles that are very close to your heart. If you like football, you like baseball, you like recycling, you like cosmetics, you like lady fashions, you like iPhone, you like Nike, go for that kind of thing, because you pick an industry that is close to your heart, that you like, that you care about, you're concerned about. And then you apply economic principle to it. You do better that way. Okay, so much for that advice, eh? So why efficiency should be the first goal? Because number one, we want to make sure that we could achieve other goals to the maximum. Because, when you have efficiency, basically, you're in equilibrium, you do not have any waste. So you, to some extent, minimize waste. And policymakers like to hear that. Your mom likes to hear that too. Because if you're wasting, how many of you I shouldn't give example, but it's okay, yeah. How many of you, when you use your toothpaste, you squeeze the last drop of it until it's finished? Yeah. Did you know that they come up with something that you could just put it in and squeeze even a little bit more. Sometimes you cut it open, you look inside, oh, so much more. 2 more days, right? Some people don't like waste, so you can relate to that. Some people say, I can't squeeze anymore. My fingers are like, weak, toss it. So I could see a homeless person pick up all this toothpaste, be able to use it for a year, But nobody does it, really. So I'm just trying to make a point there. So let's go for price ceiling. One of my first price control. Now, you remember what price ceiling does, right? The example we gave before was rent control. Price ceiling implies that this is maximum price. And let me ask you a very important question. I'd like for you to think instead of shout out the answer. In order for a price ceiling to be effective, would you impose it below the equilibrium price or above the equilibrium price? Tell me.
Above.
Which one? I asked you to think first before you give the answer. This is maximum.
Can you repeat the question?
What's your answer last row? Sorry?
Below the equilibrium.
Below equilibrium is the correct answer. Right.
price ceiling of that?
Because above is considered price floor. Price ceiling is below, equal. Because that's the highest you could go. Now, if you go above, simply because equilibrium price is above it, it's not effective if you impose it above. It's effective if you impose it below, because then you make your points below the equilibrium. Remember the rent control, it was 1,600 was the 1,600 per month of rent for the 2-bedroom apartment. And you impose it below it at about 800. But if you impose it above, it would be like, say, 1,500. That doesn't make sense. Then they vote you out, they kick you out. Don't be a president of the United States. Go home. Go take your ECN 2020 in Pembroke. Because then, you know what economics is. Anyway, okay, it keeps the price low, okay? It reduces total economic surplus. Okay, that one will take a look. Now, that's not good if it reduces the total economic surplus, okay? It would allow some poor family to buy the good at the reduced price. That's great. You're helping poor families because they cannot afford heating oil or they cannot afford the housing. You heard about food stamp. Did you know we have utility stamps also? Have you heard about that? We also have housing stamps. Never heard about it? Some places they even have transportation stamps, public transportation. That's to help the poor families. Makes sense, right? Well, if your government someday you work for Donald Trump, assuming he's still the president, when you graduate, you would think about issues like that. So economics is quite relevant. However, the same objective could have been accomplished in less ways. So what do we mean by that? So let's look at this example, okay? So in this example, we want to look at, notice that supply curve is right here. Your origin is at the bottom. So what we want to do is we want to look at the economic surplus. So let's go ahead, everybody, hands on, do it now, because you don't want to wait till you sit in front of the computer and then you say, what do I do? What do I do? Which button do I punch, So get your calculator out now. Let's calculate the consumer surplus and the producer. Everybody know how to do it? You take half base times height. I will randomly ask you for answer. And remember that this is 3,000. That's a hint to you, okay? That's your...
No, alpha.
Everybody got that? So this is $2. This is $1.40. Now here is, we can't use this. I have to move this a little bit. 80 cents here. Okay, very good. So let's calculate the consumer surplus. Okay, that will be half base times height. Somebody give me the answer, please. What is it? Mr. Moore, do you have the answer?
900.
500?
900.
Oh, 900, okay, that seems to be correct. So the base will be how much? How much is a base? Hello?
3,000.
3,000, not 3. And your height will be?
$2.
How much?
$2.
Okay, this is very interesting. The height is, we're looking at this triangle alone.
It is difference between.
So the height is the difference between,
Oh, yeah.
okay? How much?
0.6.
60 cents. Very good. Everybody see that's how you do it? Okay, so then you should get 900 as the answer. Okay? Next, let's go ahead and calculate producer surplus as well. So Mr. Moore, your answer is correct. Let's see who have it. Who has it? So you have to do the same. The height is, you have to take the difference.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chen, right? You say 900? This will be 3,000, and what is the height? The height is also 0.6 because everybody see that? You take $1.40 minus 80 cents, so this is 60 cents. So what is the total economic surplus? It's CS plus PS is equal to? Okay, very good. That's quite simple and straightforward, right? Did everybody get that? So remember that half base times height, because I'm not gonna give that to you during the exam. I only will, the test next week. I only give you one equation, that's the one on price elasticity. That's the only one I'll give you. Okay, so there it is. There's the answer. So once we calculated that, you know how to do it. You won't have to copy this down because I'd rather you calculate it before I show you the answer. So the base triangle is your consumer surplus. Now, students always get this mixed up. When I ask them to calculate consumer surplus, they will calculate producer surplus, and vice versa. In this case, it doesn't make a difference, but in most cases it would. So be sure you know below the equilibrium and above the supply is the producer surplus, because this is your supply curve and that's your demand curve. Demand curve pertains to consumer, the benefit side. So this is the area right here, okay? So now, of course you said, well, we could also calculate the triangle. If you want, alternatively, we could do that too. And if you do that, that will be what's the difference between here and here?
$1.20.
Okay, very good, $1.20. So if you calculate that big triangle, then basically you have $1.20, and that's going to be the same. This is going to be 3,000 from here to here. So then your half base times height will be, see that? Same answer, okay?
You could do that just to find the total. No.
If you want to check your answer, that's a good way to check. Yeah. That is, if you do not have any price ceiling or price fall. This is the easy part. Now the harder part is coming, everybody. So I want to make sure everybody understands this so far. This is very easy and clean, right? Okay, next. So what we're going to do, we're going to impose a price ceiling now. The price ceiling is going to be at $1.
That's
Oh, okay, I could do. So $1 is now below, very much below. Right here. You see, everybody see that? The dollar is right here. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question now. This is so important. Where is the consumer surplus? Actually, I'll ask the other way. I'll ask the easier question first. Where is the producer surplus? Again, go back to your definition, will be the area below the price line and above the supply curve. So it's that little pitiful triangle right there, correct? Do you agree? Good. Let's see it. Okay, right there. Okay. Next, I'm going to ask the next question, which is a harder one. Oh, you already saw it. Yeah, that was like, where's the producer's consumer surplus? Now, if you're not sure, right, you think, go back to that equation, that definition I gave you, which Kamel, Mr. Parker, you mentioned earlier. That will be the area below the above the price line and below the demand curve. So you know this is your price line, new price line. So area above it and below the price line. So it's this little chimney there. Okay? It's not a little chimney, actually big. There it is. So let's calculate that chimney. Okay, everybody understand that part? Yes, question, please.
Repeat why it looks like that.
Okay, why it is like that? because you go with that definition, that is, the consumer surplus is the area below this demand curve and above the price line. A new price line is now because they impose a price ceiling at $1, so that's a new price line. So everything above it and below the demand curve is that right here, because it touches the supply curve right here. So it's not that whole triangle, okay? So it's only that section. So now you say we got a problem. No, we don't. It's a little chimney, we could conquer it. So let's conquer that chimney. Let's see how we do it. But remember, this is now 1. This goes up here. All right. Now, the way to do this chimney is like this. We divide the chimney into 2 pieces, okay? So it'll be like this. This is our consumer surplus. So that little chimney up there is $2. And tell me, what is that right here? $1.80, right? Okay. So what is this height here?
20.
20 cents. And what is the base here? So little triangle would be half base, which is 1,000. The height is 20. So this will be, come on. Half of that is 10 cents. 10 cents times 1,000 is? 10% of 1,000 is 100. Got it. So that's 100 right here. So we conquer this piece right here. And then the other one is easy. The other one is a rectangle. So this is $1.80, and what's down there? $1, right? So what you do is just write it down like this, and we know this is 1,000. Oh, that one is easy. So that's the area of the rectangle, which is,
You use area of the chapter.
what is area of a rectangle, anybody?
Base times height.
Okay, base times height, oh, width times length,
Or
right.
times length.
So we stand that rectangle up. This looks like a coffin, right? Stand up coffin.
Exactly.
You put money inside. So area of the rectangle here will be, somebody tell me what's a height? 80 cents, very good. What's the width? Or the base, if you like.
1,000.
That's right. So, what is 80% of 1,000? Don't even have to use your calculator. Huh? 800. That's right.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
So the total economic surplus.
Is everybody okay with this calculation? So the way you conquer that chimney is to really just break it up into 2 pieces. One is that triangle right there. The other one is that rectangle. Okay? And now that you have done that, so your consumer surplus will be equal to
900.
900, right? 100 plus 800. If you want to write this down to help you with it, so it's also 900. Okay. Now, what is your producer surplus? We didn't calculate that. That will be?
100.
Very good. Oh yeah, you could look at this and tell me the answer. Come on. So, but you know that the difference here is 20 cents. This is 1, so 20% of 1,000 is 100, which essentially is that same piece right there, right? So if you're smart, you take a look, you calculate that and say, oh yeah, here's 20 cents. Oh yeah, here's 20 cents. It's the same piece. The area is the same. So producer surplus is now 100. Consumer surplus is now 900. So add together, you have 1,000. How much are we short now from the previous case? We're short by 800. That is your dead weight loss, which is this triangle right here. Okay? If you're not convinced, let's go ahead and calculate that triangle, see what it says. Okay, the area of that triangle, let's draw it here. DWL is that triangle, we could replicate it here. And be careful, that would be $1, that would be $1.80. Everybody with me? And that would be very careful, 3 1. Everybody understand that? Well, I'm talking about this triangle. I'm going to calculate the dead weight loss, which is our bad triangle. Okay, how about that? I think I'm not getting the point, so let's use a color one. So the bad triangle, that's your dead weight loss. Okay? So that triangle would be $1.80, right? And $1, everybody okay? And that would be,
80 cents.
oh, it's not 80 cents.
Oh, the difference is
That would be 3 and 1.
Yeah, I forgot to put
Does
this.
everybody understand that? So this would be 3 right here, right?
So
And that would
2,000.
be 1. So the difference would be very good, 2,000. You got it. Okay, half base times height. Your base is?
2,000.
Thank you. Your height is? The difference between these two will be
80 cents.
80 cents. Half of that is 40 cents. 40 cents times 2,000 is 800. If you say, oh, this is too difficult, I don't want to do it, then hey, 1,800 minus 1,000 is 800. But I calculate that so that you could verify it one more step further if you want to. Right there. So there's now no more mystery because now you understand. Any questions on how to do that? So don't try to do it in the big picture. You take them out. Take that piece out. Separate it like this. Dissect it. Write it out slowly. This is the, oh yeah, that's the. It's a colorful one. That's a pink one. That's the bad one. Okay, so we calculated that. And that's already done there, so not a problem. Now, have you noticed something? That consumer surplus was the same as before, right? But producer surplus is a lot smaller now because before it was how much? How much? 900 now is 100. So it seems like it affects the producer surplus only in this case because consumer surplus is the same. Now some of you might ask, how is that the same? The reason that it is the same is because the area of that piece right there is the same as that area. So that's why. Because consumer lose that triangle right there. Okay. Producer loses area here and that area. So in other words, there's some gain and some loss there. Okay, let's look at another example. Yes, question? Yes.
Sorry, is the consumer surplus always going to be the same for both, or is that just
No, it
50-50
just
for
happened
now?
that, yeah,
Okay.
it just happened that this is the same, yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not always going to be the same, yeah. Good question, very good question. Reduction in economic surplus from a price ceiling will be underestimated when the consumer who received the product and not the consumer who valued the amount. Who are we trying to help here? The poor people, correct? So by imposing that, $1, we're trying to help the poor people. Oh yeah, their consumer surplus actually stayed the same. So it happens to be so. It could be more. Producer surplus is much less. So in other words, it's at the expense of producer. However, there is a big piece of that triangle that was lost, not accounted for. So that's not so good. So this is a point that we're trying to say next year. So we're trying to help the poor people. May know how some people cheat on their IRS form when they file their income tax. They claim poor when they are richer than they are. So they might claim that, oh, my income is only such and such, whereas it's very high, So if people do that, you're trying to beat the system, basically. Then we say, this is not going to work. because, you know, we're trying to help the poor people, but we're trying to make sure that the people who receive the help from the government are the one who deserve the most. But if some people cheat and try to get ahead of the line, you know, and say, claim they're poor when they're not, then consumer take costly action. That's what it means here, okay? To enhance their chances of being served, then this does not work as good. And plus, the critic would say, well, look, you got that wage loss, which is pretty high, okay? So then we say there's another way that we could do better. That is, what program could be used to help the poor get heating oil that would be more efficient than the price ceiling? Because price ceiling essentially is considered a government intervention. In this case, we see that there is inefficiency. Well, I'll write this down if you have been taking notes. So this means problem. You don't have efficiency because you're not maximizing your total economic surplus anymore. But now you got that debt trying to deal with. So then we ask this question, what program could be used to help the poor get this oil that could be more efficient than the price ceiling? Transfer. Okay, so here it is. Things like food stamps, utility stamps, transportation stamps, you know what I just mentioned, helps. Costs the government a lot of money though. So let's look at these two pies here. The one on the left is when you impose price ceiling or price control. So, and we say if the price control ceiling is set at $1, like the example we just looked at just now, right? Economic surplus is 1,000 a day. And the word capital letter R and P, R stands for the rich people, P stands for the poor people. Okay, so in this case, you could see that the rich is a big percentage, maybe about 75, the poor is about 35 there. And then if you go to the bigger pie here, the proportion of the rich and the poor are the same. But which pie is bigger? The one on the right, correct? It's quite obvious. So what are we showing here? Now, this on the right, this pie shows that there is no price control. You're not imposing any price ceiling here. Instead, you use something like utility stamp, which is considered income transfer. So if you use this method known as income transfer, like issue the poor people utility stamps, you know, then you don't have that debt wage loss problem. But then there's another problem, because then you have to administer the program. So, you know, either way, and of course there could be abuse there. You know how it is. Sometimes people misuse or abuse food stamps and things like that. So what this is saying is that without the price control, but instead we use this so-called income transfer like food stamp, utility stamp, you actually have a bigger pie. And the share percentage of the poor and the rich stays the same. But you got a bigger pie, so which one is better? The one on the right. And the difference between these two essentially is, let's see if you get it. What's the difference between the two? 800. That's the difference. And that's why this pie is $800 smaller in terms of dollar value. This one is $800 bigger in terms of value. So that's all it's saying, that if you impose any price ceiling, there is this thing called inefficiency. There is this thing called debt wage loss. So it's very hard for you to get it when you read the book. So I have to kind of like, so that's why you need to come to class, you know, for me to explain this, so you understand that any time that you have, even though the government had good intention to impose a minimum wages law, you know, a rent control to help people, but a lot of time it has this unintended effects, side effects. Side effects are this so-called debt wage loss. Then what is the best solution? The best solution would be like, you try to minimize it as much as possible. You cannot totally get rid of it. On the practical side, there are some people who got help for minimum wages. True? Yeah. However, there's some people who got pushed out from the system as a result of its imposition. So the hope of the policymaker is that when you impose that, you help more people than you displace people. So there's no perfect way. You can't really go for one way and say, yeah, just do it this way. We would use food stamp or utility stamp. They have their own problem too, because look at how much abuse and fraud going on. So, you know, it's not, anyway, this is the next example. And we also want to look at price subsidies. So I'm gonna erase all that now. So I hope you get this. I hope you take notes. This is an important one for you to take notes. So you see how important that definition I gave you earlier about consumer surplus, producer surplus, pertain to which triangle helps a lot in this case. And it's going to be like that. You could impose something that's above the equilibrium, and then everything will be the other way. You know, your little triangle up there will be your consumer surplus, and then your sharp pointed downward now chimney will be your so-called producer surplus. So write this down. This is called government intervention. That results in inefficiency. Efficiency. For example, we look at them already. Number one, price ceiling. Number two, price floor, same thing. We didn't give an example on that, but it will be the same deal. And then number three, taxation. Number four, the opposite of tax, which is subsidies. Some people think this is bad, this is good, from our consumer viewpoint, because subsidies is what you receive. So we're going to look at an example now about when we impose price subsidies, what happened? Do they help the poor when you impose price subsidies? By how much do subsidies actually reduce total economic surplus in the market for bread? It has already come out and said that it will reduce economic surplus. The question is how much? Now, whenever the term is used, right, lower the total economic surplus, that implies that there is inefficiency, and implies that there is that which loss to be concerned with. Okay, we're gonna look at example, and this example is in your book if you want to turn all the way to the last diagram in the book, around 182, 181, something. Yeah, I think that's the one you're looking at, yeah. On the right hand side. What page is that?
181.
181, okay. All right. We're gonna look at subsidy. We're assuming that there's a small nation and import all its bread. Now bread is considered like staple food. At the world price of $2, it can import as many as you can. And then the economic surplus before subsidy. So let's look at the diagram. Here it is. You have a supply curve which is perfectly elastic. If it stands up, it's perfectly inelastic. Okay, so this is perfectly elastic supply curve. Your demand curve is downward sloping. So where demand curve cuts supply curve, it's where you will produce. That's your equilibrium at $2 world price, and there will be 4 million of loaves per month. Remember that number. Now I'm going to ask you a very important question. This will test how much you understand what we talked about so far. So where is the area of the consumer surplus?
$2, $4. Like that upper triangle.
Okay, that's just a high, right? And then the base is 4 million. So in other words, that triangle there. Everybody agree? Yeah. Now let's push our definition, test it, see if it works. So it's an area below the demand curve. So everything there above the price line, where's the price? The price is right here. So that's the area right there. Very good. And if you calculate that, you could get the number.
Wait, so the producer surplus will be the area of the square, right?
The area what? Okay, we're gonna get to that next, right? I wanna make sure you understand that first part first. Okay, so you got 4 million, and how do we get 4 million? That would be 4 minus 2 is 2, 2 times 4, 8. Half of 8 is 4 million. Everybody okay with that? I'm not gonna take time to calculate. Because this question is more important. You recognize where is the consumer surplus, where is the producer surplus. Okay, we're gonna look at producer surplus next. Before we calculate that, let's test our definition. It is an area below the price and above the
No supply.
above the supply curve. Yeah. So where is it? Here's the price line. The price line is also the supply curve. By the way, whoa, do we have a problem? Did it get squeezed? Because there is not a upward sloping supply curve. Supply curve is like that, so that's it. The supply curve is your producer surplus is 0. That's how you get this right here. So your economic surplus is consumer surplus plus producer surplus. 4 million, we calculate the consumer surplus. Producer surplus is 0. So you get 4 million. Okay, everybody understand that part?
Yes.
Very good. Next, we're gonna impose subsidy now. You say, oh yeah, these people are so poor. $2 is a lot for a loaf of bread. That's subsidized for them $1. Whoa. With $1, you could expect the demand and supply to go up, correct? Indeed so. So this is a case next. Okay, don't look at other things yet, okay? Just look at the diagram alone. So what we do now, if we impose $1, which line would be here, this is the price line, the price that we're talking about now. Okay, now your consumer surplus will be this beige triangle, right? Because that will be below the demand curve above the price line. So if you calculate that, you get 9 million. We could do it very quickly. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 times, it's this one now. 6 is 18. Half of 18 is 9 millions. Now, be careful. This is 6 millions now because it's lower. So let's go back to, so now that you understand, I'll go back to that, don't worry. So let's read this. Assuming $1 per loaf of subsidy, at new price of $1, consumer will buy 6 million loaves. That's what you saw. You could also look at your book on page 181, that diagram at the bottom. Consumer surplus will increase to 9 million. How much was it before? Anybody remember? Before was 4 million, and now it's 9 million. So there's a gain of 5 millions. Remember that. Now, the economic surplus after subsidy will be consumer surplus plus producer surplus plus minus tax. Now, there is this additional tax involved now because the government said, where do we get the money to subsidize people? We tax people. So the tax will be right here. The tax will be, don't look at this other thing yet. Look at the diagram alone. So the tax will be this distance here because, see, you subsidize $1 per household. So it'll be $1 multiplied by, that would be that rectangle right there, including that little triangle. So it'll be 6 millions times $1, which is 6 million. So in other words, the cost of the tax here is 6 million. The benefit of the subsidy, as we calculated earlier, from 5 million and it's now 9 million, so you gain 5 million. So the difference between the two is $1 million. Because the government say we could subsidy, we'll help people out. And producer surplus is the same. It's still gonna be 0 because you see the supply could move down like that. It's still a straight line. So that hasn't changed. The only thing that changed is we now have this additional tax. The tax amount is this rectangle right here. And it says that according to this, right, 5 million for the benefit, the cost is 6 million from taxation. Difference here is there's a loss of economic surplus of 1 million, which essentially is that triangle right there. So if you measure this triangle, 2 here, 2 millions here, and that's 1, so 2 times 1 is 2, half of 2 is 1. So that's your 1 million. Let's go back to this, see if it becomes a little bit clearer. Economic surplus after subsidy is consumer surplus plus producer surplus minus tax. So you got 9 million, and that one is still 0. Tax cost is 6, so you got 3 million. If you calculate it this way, there are 2 ways to calculate it. And then you could look at before it was 4 million. Anybody remember that? Well, because you don't have producer surplus, that essentially was just your consumer surplus. So again, you have lost 1 million, which is your debt wage loss. In other words, in this example, the government intervention, which is a subsidy, also create inefficiency. Now that smiling face is from the consumer viewpoint, okay? See, because that, on the viewpoint of the government, that should be a smiling face, and that should be a negative face. And now let's summarize everything together. So one of the questions that you could ask at this point, say, what the heck is this tax cost? How did it get here? Now remember, when we are measuring total economic surplus, we talked about, you're talking about the whole economy. Okay, the whole economy consists of people like consumer, and consists of people like producers, so you have to care about them. But we also have a third agent, which is the government. So this is when the government comes in here. You can also have a tax. And the reason that we minus off that tax is because we make an implicit assumption here that with the tax cost that, with the tax that the government collect, they're gonna use it to subsidize for people. They're going to crowd it back into the economy. Give it back to the people. That's what Donald Trump likes to say, right? Give it back to the people. So you get more at the end of the day. Okay, any questions on this at all? About how to calculate it? So when it comes to subsidies, you have to take a little bit, one step further, to include that taxation. So did everybody write this down? So this is very important. Now, if you like, I could go ahead and give this example very quickly by just drawing the picture and show you. So, and that's not in your book actually. So if it comes out in the exam, which I don't know, I haven't taken a peek yet. So in the case of price floor, it would look like that.
No.
Now, we know that price floor is being imposed above the equilibrium. So let's say the price floor is, let's say this is like $2. Just a quick example, we're not gonna calculate, but just the concept of it, okay? So if it is imposed at $1, oops, that cannot be $1, that has to be higher, $3. So this triangle right here will be your consumer surplus. If you impose a price floor above equilibrium price, so that's what it looks like. And I'm going to ask you that question now. So where is your producer surplus? Based on what we have looked at just now. Producer surplus will be, this is your supply, so this is your demand. Right here, drop it down. That's your producer surplus, that whole area there. Okay, so you might say, how do I calculate that? So again, where it touches that supply could be draw a line across. You could separate it into 2 sections, this area A, and this whole rectangle here, which is your area B. And A and B is your so-called, what? Producer surplus. Where's your debt wage loss?
The other triangle like
By itself. Now, a lot of time I see it on the assignment, so please do not make this mistake. When I ask students to calculate in this case or in the other case that we just look at, the dead weight loss, a lot of times students just do this triangle up here. What's wrong?
All half of the triangles.
That's only half of it. Yes, you have to include both. Because it belongs to the consumer as well as the producer. So that whole piece here is your dead weight. Okay, so that's just in concept without asking you to calculate it. I do want you to see the other example.